And now, wielding a red sword. Chapter 5. Sword. A single carpet arrived, but it was capacious enough to support them both. They boarded, drew closed the curtain, and made love again while it carried them back to one kingdom or the other. It turned out to be Gujarat, and the Rajah was waiting. Mim got out and held out his hand to assist Rapture. She had had to reassemble herself rather hastily, but looked stunning nevertheless. "Sire, I accept this woman, the Princess Rapture of Malachite, as my betrothed," Mim sang formally. "She alone will I marry." The Rajah nodded with glacial satisfaction. "It shall be arranged." The arrangements proceeded. In the interim, Rapture was an honored guest at the Rajah's palace at Ahmedabad. Nominally she slept alone. In practice she joined Mim. Of course the palace staff knew, and therefore so did the Rajah. It hardly mattered, since this was exactly the commitment the Rajah wanted. The two kingdoms were now engaged in the complex negotiations for the precise size and nature of the dowry, but it was certain that in the end a suitable contract of marriage would be drawn up. In the interim, Gujarat and Maharashtra were allied, and this well served the political interests of both. Mim plunged into the business of the kingdom, for with his commitment to the betrothal had come his participation in contemporary matters. He would be the next Rajah, and he had only 3 years to gain some solid experience. He talked in sing-song to avoid the stutter, and if any person thought that was funny, the person concealed his opinion most carefully. For the Rajah had issued a notice that any person caught making light of any other person's manner of speaking would be summarily beheaded. On the first day Mim had gone out, a man had laughed at a comment made by another, probably on some unrelated subject. The cavalrymen had charged into the crowd, knocking down those who failed to scurry clear, and lopped off the laugher's head, and that of his companion, for good measure. Now no one found any subject the slightest bit humorous, while Prince Pride was in the area. Gujarat was not in ideal shape. There was a great deal of poverty and some starvation in the nether castes. The problems were dual: a bad drought in the central region that had disrupted the rice harvest, and overpopulation along the coast. It would have been difficult to feed all those people if the harvest had been good. As it was impossible. Mim floated his royal carpet to the most distressed region. There he saw people spread out on the ground, having no place to go and no ability to work. Officers of the kingdom were dispensing soup, but it was thin and insufficient. It only extended lives without reversing their course. The distribution was being done in a fair and orderly manner. There simply was not enough soup to do the job. Mim thought of the 2 years he had spent confined to the palace. He had been served the rarest delicacies which he had not appreciated, and all his servants and concubines had been excellently fed. Now he cursed himself for his selfish neglect of the kingdom, where the present situation had been developing. Had he done his duty earlier, and been on the job where he belonged, he might well have been able to accomplish some amelioration of misery. How many good citizens had starved to death, while Mim had taunted his father with his refusal to do his duty. As he stood surveying the ugly situation, he saw a figure walking among the dying. He signaled a minister, who hurried forward. "Who is that man?" Mim inquired. The minister looked, but was baffled. "Prince? Whom do you mean? I see none but the dying on their pallets." "That man in the ebony black cape," Mim sang. The minister gazed again, his brow furrowed. "I see no such man." Mim had had enough of this. He strode forward, the minister scurrying after him. He approached the caped figure who was leaning over one of the pallets. "You!" he called in his fashion. "Identify yourself." The figure ignored him. Angry at this contempt, Mim confronted him face to face. "Speak or suffer the consequence," he sang. Slowly the figure raised his head. Under the cowl, the face took form. It was emaciated beyond belief, a virtual skull, the eyes sunken and the teeth protruding. "You perceive me?" the strange man asked. Mim was taken aback. This was obviously no ordinary person. "Of course I see you. I want to know who you are and what business you have here." The hollow eyes seemed to focus more specifically on him. The mouth orifice opened. "I am Famine." "Famine?" Mim exclaimed. "What kind of a name is that?" "The name of my office." "Office?" Mim demanded. He turned to the minister. "What do you know of this?" The minister looked distinctly uncomfortable. "Prince Heir, certainly there is famine. This is why we are here. I confess I do not understand your reference to an office." "The office this man who calls himself Famine refers to," Mim sang angrily. The discomfort intensified. "My lord, I see no man." This one here," Mim exclaimed. Forgetting to sing, he reached out to touch the gaunt finger, not caring that the man was probably casteless. His hand passed through the figure. Encountering no resistance, Mim paused, taking stock. "You are an apparition?" he asked Famine. "I am the incarnation of Famine, the associate of war, on a temporary mission for death," the figure said. "And no one else can see you?" "I do not know why you can see me," Famine confessed. "Normally no mortal can perceive an incarnation unless he has intimate business with that incarnation." "Well, I am concerned about the starvation occurring here," Mim sang. "I need to ascertain the extent of the problem and decide how best to alleviate it. Do you have advice on that?" "Feed your people," Famine said with a grisly grin. "How? We have neither food nor sufficient distribution facilities." "I do not give advice. I merely invoke the consequence." "Well, put me through to your superior, then," Mim sang angrily, while the minister backed surreptitiously away, deeming him crazy. Famine made some kind of magical gesture. "I have summoned Thanatos," he said. Then he faded until there was nothing to see. Mim glanced about and saw the minister retreating. "Hold!" he snapped, and the minister, still greatly ill at ease, paused. "I have just spoken with the incarnation of Famine, and am about to speak with the incarnation of Death. You will remain." "As my lord wishes," the minister said nervously. It was evident that he would have preferred to be anywhere but here. There was a flurry in the sky, and a figure appeared. Quickly it approached. It was a beautiful pale horse, galloping through the air without benefit of wings, bearing a cloaked rider. The horse drew to a halt before Mim, snorting vapor, and the rider dismounted. If Famine had been gaunt, Thanatos was completely skeletal. His bone-fingered hand extended. "Greetings, Prince," the skull-face said. Mim took the hand. The bones were bare but firm. "Greetings, Thanatos. Would it be too much to ask that you make yourself visible to the minister here? He thinks I'm hallucinating." Thanatos turned to the minister. "Greetings, minister," he said. The minister's mouth sagged open. "Gree," he began. "Try singing it," Mim suggested in sing-song. Thanatos faced again toward Mim. "My associate asked me to speak with you." "I am concerned with the suffering here," Mim sang. "I want to alleviate it, but am bound about by circumstances I cannot adequately control. I thought that, since you have an interest in this matter, you might proffer advice." Thanatos lifted his skeletal wrist and touched a heavy watch there. Abruptly the scene froze. The minister's look of shock remained unchanging on his face. The clouds in the sky stopped moving. Smoke from a distant fire became stationary. Nothing moved, except for Thanatos, Mim, and the great pale horse. "The fact that you are able to perceive incarnations suggests that you relate to us," Thanatos said. Therefore I will explore this matter. Kronos will know." He touched his watch again, and suddenly a figure cloaked in white stood with them, holding up a large, glowing hourglass. "Yes, Thanatos," the new figure said. He appeared to be a normal man. "And Mars, good to encounter you both again." "Mars?" Mim asked. "Mars?" Thanatos echoed, seeming equally perplexed. "Oh, hasn't he taken office yet?" Kronos asked. "I regret my slip. I travel in the opposite direction, you know. I will erase the episode." "No!" Mim cried, in his stress, not stuttering. "Ignorance has brought enough mischief already. I will keep the secret if that's what it is. What has Mars to do with this?" Kronos exchanged a glance with Thanatos, then shrugged. "Your problem here is war. War diverts necessary resources wastefully, so that food is destroyed instead of feeding the hungry. To alleviate misery like this, you must first abolish war. Since you are to become Mars, the incarnation of war, you should be in a position to deal with this." "I? Become Mars?" Mim asked, dumbfounded. "But I have a kingdom to run, a bride to marry." "Well, I suppose you could turn the office down," Kronos said. "Nothing is fixed, and certainly the reality I remember can become another reality. But if you are serious about alleviating suffering in the world—" Mim looked out over the pallets, each bearing a starving person, men, women, and children. "I must stop this," he said. "Then the opportunity will be yours," Kronos said. "I am glad that the future is not to change in this respect. I have enjoyed working with you, and will be sorry to see you depart, though of course that is not the way you perceive it." "You live backwards?" Mim asked, returning to his sing-song as the stutter threatened. "From the future to the past?" "True. You would think that after a decade or two I would remember that things are opposite for the rest of you, but every so often I slip." He turned to Thanatos. "Just how long ago was the change in the Mars office made? I have been absorbed by other matters and entirely overlooked the event." "It hasn't happened yet," Thanatos said. Kronos grimaced. "There I go again. Of course you have not yet seen the change. I've been jumping about so much, including an interaction with Mars here, that—" He shook his head. "What was the reason you summoned me?" "I believe you have answered the question already," Thanatos said. "I was curious why this mortal could perceive incarnations. Since you advise us that he is to become one, this becomes clear." "Glad to have been of help in that case." The hourglass brightened, and Kronos disappeared. "If he lives backwards," Mim asked, "why aren't his words backwards?" "He controls time," Thanatos explained. "He simply reverses it for himself so as to align with our frame for a short period. But as you saw, these constant reversals can lead to confusion at times. He's a good man and an effective incarnation, but fate is the only one of us who really understands him. Now, if your question has been answered—" "Wait, no, it hasn't," Mim sang. "I don't know anything about becoming the incarnation of war sometime in the future. I only want to alleviate the suffering I see here and now." "You are taking the short view," Thanatos cautioned him. "When you become Mars, as Kronos said, you will be in a position to accomplish the alleviation you seek." "But that won't help these starving folk now." Thanatos nodded. "True. In the interest of good relations between incarnations, I will summon one who may help you now." He faced into the sky. "Gaia, will you answer?" "Gaia?" Mim asked. All of this was highly confusing. The air seemed to be thickening about them. Thin mist formed. It became fog, then a smoke-like formation that coalesced into a vaguely human shape. The details clarified into those of a large, solid woman dressed in green. "Thanatos," she answered. "This man at the moment mortal is to assume the office of Mars at a later date," Thanatos said. "Kronos mentioned it, but right now there is a concern about the folk here who are starving." Gaia considered Mim. "In that case it behooves me to oblige him. I can improve the local climate so that the crops flourish." "That would require at least a season," Mim sang. "These here will all be dead by then." She considered. "Then I will provide mana." She stretched out her arms, became fog, and dissipated. "Mana?" Mim sang, even more perplexed than he had been. "Gaia's ways can be strange," Thanatos said. The thinning fog settled to the ground and coalesced. Mim stooped and scooped up a bit of the residue on a finger. He put it to his mouth, tasting it. "Mana?" he repeated. "Perhaps the concept is not in your legends," Thanatos said. "In the Judeo-Christian mythos, it is a nutritious substance that appears on the ground. I suspect it is some kind of rapidly reproducing fungus." "Food," Mim breathed, understanding. "I suspect you owe Gaia a favor," Thanatos murmured. Then he mounted his pale horse, touched his watch, and rode off into the sky. The scene returned to life. "Set men to collecting the mana," Mim sang to the minister. The man did not even try to argue. He got on it, evidently understanding very little of this development. In this manner a number of starving people were fed. The mana came every day and fed them all, and no one quite understood this phenomenon, except perhaps Mim himself. But he had a number of serious questions about the larger picture. He, to become the incarnation of war? Not if he could help it. He had business to complete as a mortal. Yet the plight of the starving people had touched him deeply, and if there were some way to eliminate this kind of misery in the future... Time passed, and no further supernatural manifestations occurred. He began to believe that his encounter with famine, death, time, and nature had been a hallucination and the mana a coincidence. Rapture of Malachite remained loving and dependent, and he took hold of the reins of government with increasing competence as his direct experience grew. The Raja sent him on missions to other nations and to other parts of the world, so that he could work on the broader scale to benefit his kingdom. He discovered himself to be surprisingly effective at this type of endeavor. He took Rapture with him to speak for him, literally. She was beautiful, so that none of the old men who ran the other nations objected to her presence, and she was trained in all the graces of royalty, so that the old men's wives found her compatible. But mainly she understood Mim. He could convey his meaning to her by a few gestures and facial expressions and some faintly hummed words, and she would translate these to exquisitely rendered English. Since international dialogues often required the intercession of translators, no one found it remarkable that this handsome young prince of a nation of India used one, and some did not even realize that it was because of his stutter, not his ignorance of the language, that this was so. But Gujarat's most pressing need was for modernization, and for that it required money. This meant a loan from Uncle Sugar to the West. Mim pondered the matter. He realized that even Uncle Sugar expected some minimal quid pro quo. What did a poverty-stricken, backward kingdom like Gujarat have to offer in return for money? Mim came to a conclusion. He took Rapture and went to brace the Raja. "My beloved says he can get a loan of $1 billion from the West," she announced brightly. The Raja almost did a double take. He had evidently not appreciated just how well Mim and Rapture worked together. Normally women did not speak on matters of government, as they were, in the Raja's view, incompetent for such matters. But after all the effort he had gone to gain Mim's agreement to the betrothal, he was glad to tolerate Rapture in whatever manner she manifested. "And how should this miracle be achieved?" he asked. She glanced at Mim, who hummed, "Base." "There is a military base that—" she began. "Absolutely not," the Raja stormed. "We have never tolerated foreign military equipment on our terrain." Mim was already signaling and humming to her. "Oh, honored father-in-law-to-be," Rapture said dulcetly, flashing a winning smile at him. "My beloved well understands that, but this is the modern day, and the modern world is not a thing we can safely ignore. It would be better to accept the base and let them hire our people at their ludicrously high wages. And we can have our spies there to report on their secrets. It would represent a simple way to watch them." The Rajah paused, considering. It was more than the logic that impressed him, Mim knew. It was the manner that Rapture converted Mim to a brilliant negotiator. Of course, most of the words were her own, based on the discussion Mim had had with her beforehand. But because they were nominally from him, he had the credit. Mim's handicap of speech had been a sore trial to the Rajah's pride, and this apparent eloquence had to be deeply satisfying to him. "Still, the base would represent an aggravation to Uncle Vinegar, to the north," Mim hummed and gestured. "Which may be no bad thing, O great Rajah," Rapture said, sending him a smile to melt ice. "It will help establish Gujarat's independence from the influence of that power." "But," Mim hummed again. Rapture leaned forward persuasively. The Rajah was an old hand at women, but even his eyes glinted a smidgen as they took in her décolletage. He recognized the finest vintage when he saw it. "And since Uncle Sugar would be obliged to grant us a loan of $1 billion for the privilege of establishing that base, our independence will be further enhanced," she said. The Rajah shook his head. He sighed. "Do it, then," he grumbled. "A prince must be allowed to make his own mistakes." Mim knew that the Rajah would never have agreed had it not been for Rapture. The old man was not getting soft. He simply realized that the logic was good enough to stand, and that if this was the way Mim and Rapture could operate in the West, they would almost certainly get that loan. More than anything else, the Rajah wanted a truly effective leader of his own blood to succeed him, and Mim had just demonstrated how that could be. They took a royal carpet through the outdated airport and caught one of the few international flights to the west. Magic was fine for local transport, but science prevailed on the global scale. Rapture was a little awed by the huge airplane with its blazing jet engines, but she liked the plush first-class seats and the petite uniformed stewardesses. "We should have them on the carpets," she murmured. "They're better than eunuchs," Mim sang agreement. The airplane angled up far into the sky above the clouds. "But why doesn't the air get thin?" Rapture inquired, worried. "I never was able to take a carpet this high without suffocating, and it got cold, too." "Pressured cabin," he advised her. Isn't science wonderful? In due course they reached the fabulous West. Their plane landed at Washington, and they were met by a high-level functionary with a limousine. They were set up in a fine hotel where every room had scientifically heated water, electrical lights, and color television sets. Rapture just shook her head in wonder. She knew what these things were, of course, for her kingdom was not entirely backward, but had never seen them so freely bestowed on the populace. They met the president of Uncle Sugarland and made their presentation. After he and his cabinet ministers had gazed at Rapture, they agreed that this was the diplomatic thing to do. They really needed that base, and it was only neighborly to make the loan. Of course they preferred that the loan be spent on goods produced by the loaning nation. Rapture agreed, turning on one of her winter-banishing smiles. Of course there were complications to be handled, but the understanding had been reached. Mim placed orders for modern scientific fertilizer, harvesting machinery, and trucks to haul the produce to market, and the industrialists of the West were pleased. The modernization of Gujarat was proceeding. Meanwhile, the complex negotiations for Rapture's dowry were nearing completion, and the royal marriage was almost ready to be scheduled 2 years after the month in Honeymoon Castle. "Soon you will be mine," Mim sang. "I have always been yours," she replied. "Soon we can conceive the heir." But the ways of fate and politics were treacherous. The world nearly always had war somewhere, ranging from global conflicts that spread across entire continents to tiny brush fires in isolated spots. At the moment everything was quiet except for Gujarat's smoldering border war with the eastern neighbor Rajasthan. This expended resources that Mim preferred to use for agriculture so that he could see to the abolition of starvation in his kingdom, so he turned his attention to it. He took Rapture to Delhi and met with the high ministers of Rajasthan. The negotiation proved effective, for Mim and Rapture were by now a highly polished team. Indeed, the ministers seemed hardly to realize that Mim was not the one speaking, so effectively did Rapture translate for him. They arranged to establish a demilitarized zone and to allow unarmed peasants to cross the border freely for purposes of trade and fraternization. Many of the peasants of that region were of the same ethnic tribe, and the war had been a special hardship to them. They would be glad to cooperate. The two kingdoms exchanged lavish gifts, and peace was declared. Thanks to Mim's effort, the last festering spot of war in the world had been extinguished. There was a great celebration, and a special holiday was declared. But in this, ironically, was the seed of Mim's destruction. The Raja of Rajasthan was so impressed with Mim's demeanor and skill as a negotiator that he decided to cement the new order with a marriage alliance. This was to be expected, and, indeed, the Raja had a serviceable son, and Mim's sister was of nuptial age now and would make a suitable wife, provided the nuisance of a proper dowry could be negotiated. But the Raja did not want just a royal marriage. He wanted Mim himself. "My son, while adequate in all necessary matters, lacks the particular genius you possess," he explained. "I want you in charge when I assume another incarnation." For of course people did not really die in India. They merely cast off worn bodies and reincarnated in new ones, better or worse as their prior lives justified. Mim, appalled, could not even stutter. "But Prince Pride is betrothed to me," Rapture protested. "Set it aside," the Raja declared. "My son will marry you, but my daughter must wed Prince Pride of Gujarat." Mim opened his mouth. "We shall consider your generous offer," Rapture said quickly, and urged him out of the hall. In private, Mim was shaking. "I can't marry her," he sang in agitation. "I love you." "And I love you," she returned. "But we cannot throw the Raja's offer in his face. Rajasthan is a good, strong kingdom. We dare not aggravate it so soon after making peace. We must return to our kingdoms and consider how to turn this down without bad feeling." She was right, of course. They returned to Ahmedabad and presented the situation to the Raja of Gujarat. "An alliance with Rajasthan?" he asked. "Wonderful! It shall be arranged forthwith." "But I am to marry Rapture," Mim protested in sing-song. "Do not be concerned. I hereby null the betrothal. She shall be free for Rajasthan's prince." "But I want to marry her," Mim sang. The Raja squinted at him. "Since when did your desire have anything to do with it?" he inquired. "But when I resisted Rapture, you sent me to the Honeymoon Castle with her." "You shall go again with the Princess of Rajasthan. This is a better alliance than the one with Maharashtra." Mim realized that it was useless to argue. His father's decision had been made. Almost steaming with chagrin and fury, he retreated. They sent a message to Rapture's father. His reaction was opposite to that of Mim's father. "We have negotiated the dowry. It is too late to null the betrothal. It must be consummated." But Mim's father was adamant. The new betrothal would stand. Mim was abruptly confined to his palace, and Rapture was shipped back to Maharashtra. The Raja of Maharashtra, furious at this open snub, declared war on Gujarat. Mim, alone except for the guards and servants and concubines, strode wrathfully around the palace. His impotent rage floated about him like a foul cloud. He absolutely refused to be cheated of Rapture. But he knew of no way to avoid it. His father might be dying and getting senile, but while he lived he ruled, and Mim was subject to his will. He would shortly find himself back at Honeymoon Castle with a new princess, and if he did not come to love her, he would be forced to marry her anyway. He faced the great front window overlooking the entrance. Guards marched there, ensuring that no one passed by without authorization. Mim bit his tongue. His body made a slight anticipatory shiver as he tasted the blood. He would not be confined here much longer. But as his berserker rage developed, something strange happened. Outside, in the night sky above the lighted court, a glowing object approached. Mim stared at it. It was a great red sword, angled up at a 45-degree angle, floating unsupported. The blade was shining steel, and Mim somehow knew that nothing that sharp edge touched could remain whole. This was a magic instrument. Still his rage governed him. Refusing to be distracted longer by the manifestation, he got ready to move. The red sword swung in toward him. It passed through the glass of the window without breaking it. Mim swung to face it, ready to destroy whatever came against him, whether natural or supernatural. Red froth bubbled between his lips. The sword came to a halt immediately before him. Its glow increased. It was challenging him. "Then damned be you!" he cried, spewing bloody spittle, his stutter absent in his rage. He reached out and grasped the hilt of the sword. The glow of the sword magnified. Now it surrounded Mim, lighting the room. But greater than the physical glow was the emotional glow, for suddenly his awareness of himself was far more intense than he had ever before experienced. He felt strong, invulnerable, omnipotent. Strange power surged through him. His berserker rage was suspended by the wonder of this new power. What was happening? There was the suggestion of a whisper of a sound. Mim turned and saw a thin mist forming. It coalesced into a cloud from which the figure of a mature woman shaped. Her eyes were as blue as the summer sky, and her hair was vaguely green. "Gia!" he exclaimed, recognizing the manner of the incarnation of nature. "You have now assumed the office of the incarnation of war, known as Mars, Ares, or whatever you prefer, as Kronos advised," she said, coming clear. "I thought it best to be on hand in case you had a question." Now he remembered. Kronos, living backwards, had indeed said it. Mim had somehow let his awareness slide. But, he started, then shifted to sing-song. "But I don't want to be the incarnation of war. I only want to marry Rapture." "Of course," she agreed noncommittally. "But you stand in need of information. You don't have to accept the office. If you simply renounce the red sword and turn it loose, it will seek the second most qualified applicant, and you will remain mortal. I am here to help you decide." Mim remembered how she had brought the manna for his starving people. Gaia had extraordinary power. "I am grateful for that. You see, the incarnation of war exists only as long as war exists," she said. "Wherever war is being fought, there Mars goes to supervise. There must be some order in the world, after all. On those rare occasions when there is no war, Mars dissipates, and his soul travels to heaven or hell, as the case may be, according to its balance of good or evil. Recently war ended, and so your predecessor vacated the office and the red sword was retired. But now war is resuming, so the need for the office has been restored, and the sword is seeking the appropriate officer. It cannot be just any person. Only one who is proficient in weapons and martial arts, and in the strategies and management of war is eligible. In addition, he must desire the position, that is, he must be the most warlike of all those eligible in the region of the resumed war. But I do not desire. The desire for war is defined by the emotion of the candidate, she explained. The one with the most pervasive anger. That anger attracts the red sword as a magnet attracts iron. The sword cannot be in error about that. No, it had not been in error. There was no rage like that of a berserker, even a controlled one like Mim. So the red sword of war had sought him out. "But you say I can decline," he sang, "so I can remain mortal and marry Rapture. "You may decline," she agreed, "but if you remain mortal, I doubt that you will wed Rapture. You will be subject to the conditions of your situation, and will be required to marry the Princess of Rajasthan unless you suicide first. On the other hand, if you accept the office, you will wield considerable power. You will be in a position to take Rapture, if that is your desire. But she will remain mortal. True, but she may join you, and her life will not be shortened. She would have to leave her kingdom, but if she chose to join you, she would choose to," he sang with certainty. "Then it seems you have nothing to lose by accepting the proffered office," she said. "However, I am obliged to warn you of one significant contraindication." "The catch," he sang. "The catch," she agreed. "It seems that Satan has his evil hand in this. He had a grudge against the former Mars and wanted him to be replaced. Thus Satan worked assiduously in what was for him an unusual cause, that of peace on earth. He succeeded for a moment, and that retired Mars. Now Satan surely believes that the new incarnation will be easier to manage because of his lack of experience." "I have no truck with Satan," Mem sang. "I hardly believe in him. I am Hindu." "Nominally," she said. "As a prince you are naturally skeptical about religion." To that he had to agree. In his private heart he subscribed to no religion, thus it seemed that his rage had been the determining factor, not his belief in any particular supernatural framework. "Now, with that warning you may decide," Gaia said. "If you fear the mischief of Satan—" "Fornicate Satan," he sang. "If I can have Rapture by assuming the office of the Incarnation of War, then I shall assume it." "It had occurred to me that you might feel that way," Gaia said. "Welcome, then, to our number, Mars." And he knew that his commitment had been made.